As we enter the month of Elul, we start to realize that memory is something that's important. We start gathering all of our thoughts together and reviewing ourselves as we engage in the deep work of Cheshbon HaNefesh, the accounting of our soul. We remember all that we did over the year, every amazing thing and every sinful thing. And lastly, hopefully we remember every time we needed to forgive somebody, but maybe we forgot to do that quite yet. We read in Ki Titzei every Elul, this week's Parsha, that demands remembering. Actually, it commands us to remember Amalek. So why would we remember Amalek during the month of Elul as we begin our own tshuva process? And this, I believe, is not a coincidence. Famously, in Ki Titzei contains more mitzvot than any other Torah portion. By the way, in case you're curious, for those Bible nerds, somebody counted it: 74 commandments, 27 positive and 47 negative. In that list, the Torah portion ends with an odd commandment. We are exhorted to remember not to forget what Amalek did when we were exiting through the desert at Sinai. We were told when we were coming out of Egypt that to blot out the memory of Amalek. That is, of course, a paradox. For how can we both remember Amalek and blot out the memory? Amalek, of course, is thought of as the quintessential bad guy in the Torah. And to better understand that episode, I think we need to look back, specifically in Exodus. Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. Whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. But whenever he let his hand down, Amalek prevailed. Aaron and Hur, one on each side, supported his hands. Thus his hands remained steady until the sunset. And Joshua overwhelmed Amalek and his people with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Inscribe this in a document as a reminder and read it out loud to Joshua. I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. The Lord will be at war with Amalek throughout the ages." Here we are commanded to remember the person who hurt us in the most profound and deep ways. How? He went after the most vulnerable in our communities. Amalek specifically hurt those who were unable to defend themselves at the back of the line. As we enter Elul, we are commanded to remember many things that we don't want to remember. For some of us, it is painful just to go and engage in the process. It's not pleasant to recall painful moments when we shamefully did something causing someone else's pain, or maybe shamefully did something that hurt ourselves. In fact, we want to forget those moments, but this is the time of year we're also commanded to remember. And when I was contemplating and thinking about memory, I realized that there were two different types. The first kind is using our memory as a teaching moment. I hope many of us do. And asking, do we actually use it as a learning tool to avoid repeating those mistakes? Or do we allow moments that happened to turn into and fester in us so that they become a chip on our shoulder that we carry for many years? The second, and that first type, by the way, is individual. The second type, the one that this parsha refers to deeply, is communal. In the first type, we review that individual type repeatedly. And I have given many sermons on individual remembrance and tshuva. But the second type, I think we have spent less time. And that is what I want to focus on this evening, the communal memory. The Torah doesn't simply tell us to remember Amalek. It tells us how Amalek attacks us. They attacked all the stragglers in the rear. They exhausted the weak ones, the ones who had fallen. In other words, the Torah remembers the victims first, and then the villain second. And I think that detail matters. Perhaps the commandment is not simply about hating Amalek. Perhaps it is about refusing to forget those who are the most vulnerable among us so that we are the ones learning the lesson of protecting them. Every generation has its stragglers, those who cannot keep up, those whose needs are invisible to the majority, those who live life from the margins instead of from its center. I spent time this past week with a disability rights advocate whose life is in a wheelchair. And as we talked, I began to see the world through her eyes, ever so slightly differently. The buildings that I had assumed were always accessible, I realized really weren't when she shared that there was just one door that she could get into. When I assumed that all bathrooms are handicapped accessible, she shared that even in multi-story buildings that were grandfathered in before the ADA, there may be only one handicapped bathroom accessible for her. There may only be one door that she can walk into or wheel through that's actually wide enough for her wheelchair. Doors that seem ordinary for us to breeze through are barriers for her. And the truth is, as she went on to talk about all of the different types of laws that universities experience, the education is under one office, housing a different, building and grounds yet a third, the registrar a fourth, I realized that even in university settings, there's not one spot that deals with accessibility. And the truth is, I never noticed it. I thought the ADA had it covered. And it's not because I didn't care, but because I really didn't need to. The stragglers around us, by the way, and I want to be clear, disability and disabled doesn't mean unable. What it means is that we have to make accommodations. It doesn't mean that they are less than. It doesn't mean that just because we can't see their disability that we need to judge them. Rather, it asks us to see the humanity in them and to recognize that we have to treat them as coming from God. I believe this parsha reminds us to be mindful, therefore, of who is in the back. It asks us to be uncomfortable with the question of whether or not we are truly inclusive. The discomfort, I believe, is the point. Amalek's sin wasn't cruelty, it was indifference to who was vulnerable and where. Our tshuva, this Elul, can't only be about the words we said or the promises that we have broken. It has to be also, who have we failed to notice this year? Whose access, whose dignity, whose full presence among us did we take for granted or simply forget to even consider? To remember Amalek is to commit to being the opposite of Amalek, to be a community that looks toward the back of the line and the front of the line. That means widening doorways at times. That means rethinking where a microphone stand will be or whether our seats leave room for someone who needs it. It means making sure that there's a chair with arms for SIG always available, and recognizing that members of our congregation come in sometimes on walkers or use canes, or that they even have disabilities we cannot see. Blotting out the memory of Amalek doesn't happen by forgetting what they did. It happens by becoming a people who would never do it to ourselves, a people who count everyone in the camp, especially the ones in the back, as fully part and unmistakably one of us. This is why this portion comes up, I believe, during Elul. Elul asks us to remember, invites us not to nurse old wounds and not to keep a score. To remember, so we start the process of tshuva. We are not to look at those with disabilities as tragic, as victims, as vulnerable. Rather, we are commanded to remember the places where human beings become invisible, to remember the moments when we fail to notice another person's struggle, to remember that every community is judged not by how it treats its strongest members, but by how carefully it protects those who are the most vulnerable. This is a warning and a lesson for all of us this Elul. If we remember only our enemies, by the way, I believe we will become suspicious. If we remember, though, our responsibilities to God, to one another, and to ourselves, we become holy. May the season of remembrance open our eyes, not only to what has happened to us, but also to those around us who need us to notice them. This is a memory, I believe, worth carrying in to the new year.